Pompeii kind of feels like a movie that would come out in like 1998 when Hollywood was obsessed with volcano movies. You remember Dante's Peak starring Pierce Brosnan and Volcano with Tommy Lee Jones? This movie would fit in right there just perfectly. Pompeii stars Kit Harington, Emily Browning, Kiefer Sutherland, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Jared Hess. Now what this movie's about is the town of Pompeii and the inevitable destruction by a volcano. Now we know this story, we've heard it before, the volcano explodes and all that stuff. We know what's going to happen basically. We don't know how they're going to tell the story. It's kind of like Titanic. You go into Titanic knowing Titanic's going to sink. It's about how they tell the story. Is it going to be exciting? Is it going to be fun? Are you going to be invested in the characters? Are the special effects going to blow us away? None of these things happen in Pompeii. I can assure you of that. As I said, this movie is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who's probably best known for his Resident Evil movies. He's not really one of my favorite directors. I'm not a hater, like, you know what I mean? Like, if he made a good movie, I'd say, hey, that's a good movie. He just doesn't really make good movies. I would say the closest I've ever gotten to liking one of his films was Event Horizon. I actually really enjoyed about the first half of that movie, and then once the plot really kicked in, it just went insane in not the right ways. Pompeii is the kind of movie where as you watch it, you slowly start to realize that this is a movie that this director is trying to make with special effects that he can't quite afford. It's like he's trying to include a special effect in almost every single shot, to the point where you start to realize that almost everything on the screen is fake, and it doesn't look convincing. There are a lot of movies with great background CGI where you don't even notice. Like, if you actually watch this video online about The Wolf of Wall Street and the special effects that were in that movie, there were an absurd amount of special effects in that movie that I never even noticed. In Pompeii, it honestly looks like straight to DVD special effects. There are moments where the volcano's exploding where you're like, okay, that looks pretty convincing. But for the most part, the special effects in this movie are extremely subpar. Like, there's a scene where the volcano's exploding and the main character's on a horse and he's running forward towards this chariot and the ground is crumbling beneath him and the volcano's in the background and debris is flying everywhere. And the green screen behind him is obvious that he's just standing on some sort of a mechanical thing that makes him go up and down, and everything else in the shot is CGI. And it just comes to the point where absolutely nothing is convincing in this movie, and I actually started to laugh. There are moments in this movie where characters are injured by debris or by fire or lava or whatever, and where it's supposed to be kind of frightening and harrowing, it's filmed in such a way that was so incredibly fake, and the stunt work was so terrible that my friend and I were laughing. We couldn't stop laughing, in fact. We were trying so hard not to annoy people around us, but there are moments in this movie that are laughably bad. This movie really copies off Gladiator. It basically is Gladiator until it turns into Dante's Peak, set back in the older days. It's basically the best way that I can describe this movie. The scenes in the Gladiator ring are terribly filmed. I mean, there are some moments where you'd be like, okay, this action's awesome, but it's like he cuts every time someone hits or moves themselves. It's not shaky cam. It doesn't look bad, like the shots are composed all right. It's just that he cuts every time someone strikes or moves. There are so many cuts for one fight scene that you cannot really piece together what is happening in your mind. You're just watching a mindless string of shots in which something subconsciously is telling you that two people are fighting. But if you actually sit down and watch the shots, it doesn't look right. It just doesn't look right. Now, I'm not saying that every movie with a fight scene has to have a long take. I'm just talking about, don't cut every time someone goes, ding, cut, ding, cut. Whoosh, cut. And I'm not exaggerating. That is how many cuts are in these fight scenes, and it starts to really numb your brain. The acting in the movie is mostly terrible. Kit Harington from Game of Thrones, I hear he's excellent on that show. I have not gotten a chance to watch that show yet. Trust me, I know you would like me to watch it. Many people have told me to, and I probably will one day because I've heard nothing but good things about it. But in this movie, he's pretty much emotionless. When he's in the fight scenes, you don't get a sense of urgency on his face at all. He's just very, very bland in this movie. Most of the acting is, especially Kiefer Sutherland as the villain, he is truly awful in this movie. I'm talking about total, hammy, cheesy, everything about his dialogue is terrible. It's just that in this movie, under this direction, most of these actors suck. It's not entertaining. I was not enthralled in any way. I wasn't into any of the characters. And the special effects that maybe could then be like, okay, look, we have some fun CGI images to look at. This is going to be entertaining. Those aren't even very good, so none of it really works at all. There is one good fight scene in this movie that I enjoyed during a Gladiator sequence that was fairly well done, like maybe a few brief little moments where I was like, okay, That actually felt pretty good. That was actually directed fairly well. Why isn't the rest of the movie directed like that? For that reason, I'm going to give Pompeii a D-. Really nothing about this movie worked for me. So guys, the movie's coming out in about a week. If you see the movie, let me know what you thought of it. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.